Welcome to another Cargo Kings video today, Kings. Today we're going to be discussing a hot topic. Is Counter-Strike better or worse than Valorant? Today with me I have my good guy, Gabriel Amador. Say hello.
Hello.
Alright, so let's jump right into it. Alright, so the first thing we'd like to talk about, being different between the two, is the mechanics. A lot of people think Counter-Strike's too hard, Valorant might be too easy, but we're going to break this down into three parts. So first off, let's talk about gunplay. In my opinion, I think the gunplay in Counter-Strike is great. And at the very least, it's very rewarding to those who try to learn it. And it's not just something that you can just learn. You have to practice it. And that's what I like about it. Amador, do you have any thoughts on the gunplay?
Yeah, as far as Counter-Strike's actual gunplay goes, it's probably the top league. I mean, there's not really anything else that's going to come close to that in terms of accuracy and reward for skill. There's not a lot of games that are on that level.
Yeah, if we were to compare Valorant, I would say Valorant is too easy when it comes to gunplay. It's not that it's bad, it's just too easy. It's like you just memorize one spray, and that one spray pretty much works for every weapon, and then that's kind of it. Where in Counter Strike, you have to learn different sprays for different weapons, and maybe that's a little unnecessary, but at least the skill of learning a spray takes a lot of dedication. To where in Valorant, I learned it in like 5 minutes. Sure. So I think as far as like gunplay goes, I would have to give it to CSGO overall, but Valorant's not bad by any means in that sense. It's just a little more depth, a little more reward. The next topic is movement. All right, the movement mechanics in Counter-Strike, in my opinion, are just stupid. I mean, I'll go into Amador. Do you have any initial thoughts on movement?
Movement on CS:GO. It can. Uh, I really like to be able to sprint. I don't really like the mechanic of switching between weapons to speed yourself up, even if it sort of makes sense. I don't know. I like high agility games, and CS:GO is probably the lowest agility game you can possibly play competitive. So, yeah, definitely very restricting. Very restricting.
Don't get me wrong. I like the slow gameplay of Counter Strike, but it feels extremely unnatural to someone who hasn't like. When I switched to PC, which was about a year or two ago, I could switch over to like Rainbow Six or Overwatch so easily. Like it didn't make a difference. Even Fortnite, like there's nothing. But as far as Counter Strike goes, when you're actually moving around, it just feels so clunky. Like it doesn't feel natural. And there's all these like little things about it that I just find are extremely like, I don't know, just silly. Like for example, like when you strafe, when you go right to like stop and shoot someone, you have to like click left. Like you have to like you're holding D and then you click A in order to stop completely. It just seems like an extra step that doesn't necessarily seem necessary. Now, as far as bunny hopping and stuff like that goes, where you're like flying across the map, it's all very cool, but does it really add to the gameplay? Every once in a while, I will say it does. Every once in a while, a pro gets a really cool bunny hop but at the end of the day, I would say that I think the biggest problem with it is just like that for a beginner, it's just like impossible. It just feels so clunky, unnatural. And yeah, that's what I think of CS:GO. What do you Emmett? Do you have any more to talk about?
I don't know. I'd probably say for CS:GO, final thoughts are just um, definitely a thrill for the risk and reward play, but not much in terms of movement or like even the map variety doesn't really appeal to me.
Well, we'll get into maps
So
later again.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I agree. The reward of being able to master movement is high. If you're able to like successfully peek and then one tap someone on the like on your strafe, that's pretty like it's very exciting. It's very rewarding. Again, it's that like depth of mechanics for satisfaction. But I think again, it's that for that beginner, it shouldn't feel like a beginner shouldn't play this game and feel like completely clunky, like have no idea at all how to play. It's just completely unnatural. I think the depth could still be there and them still have that. And I don't know if Valorant is the perfect example of that. I don't know. I've been playing Counter Strike for a couple of years now, and in my short time on Valorant, I don't know. It definitely feels better. I wouldn't say that my game is any funner because it's hard, but I don't know. Do you have any comments on Valorant's ease?
I like it. I definitely like. I don't remember what the character's name is, but the one that could just basically like jump on like the rooftops and stuff. He was pretty freaking cool.
Jet, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely liked that. I love games with, just crazy agility. So I think that makes it like, it takes three-dimensional gameplay, or you could say like multi-tiered battles, like where you're able to go up and down like floors or levels, and go on walls and stuff. I really like that stuff. So Valorant definitely gets points for that.
Yeah, I'll give movement over to Valorant. But Counter Strike does have a couple cool things. Bunny hopping and stacking, like standing on top of each other's heads, has always been super fun. But again, we're talking like on your average game play, like it's not. At the end of the day, it's just a little bit inconvenient for most players. Next, let's talk about execution. I think this is probably the biggest difference between the two as far as like utility and stuff goes. In Counter Strike, you have smokes, mollies, regular nades, and flashes, and then there's also the decoy. All of them are fairly like, it's not like it's whatever you call it. It's not like you can't figure out how to use them, but to use them effectively takes a lot of game knowledge. And I would personally say, like, although I love the strategy of throwing the flashes and then throwing the smokes, like I love the strategies that go along with it. I would personally say that it's almost like too difficult. Like every single new player to Counter Strike, you needs to learn like all these different smokes. They need to learn like when a right click flash is useful, or when I left click flashes, or when I double click, and then there's like the jump throws and like walking throws and run throws, and like it's just a little bit too much. Like I kind of like that Valorant just lets you pick and choose where your smoke goes. I don't want to like completely. I mean, maybe they go a little too far with it, but it would be nice if the strategy you wanted to like pull off in Counter-Strike wasn't impossible without you having to sit there and learn a ton of different smokes and then coordinate with someone else. Amador, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think you had that one pretty summed up.
Okay, in a Valorant, if you have a new idea, then you can actually do it. You could like, oh, I want to smoke over here next round. Okay, well, there's nothing stopping you from doing that because there's no like no sort of mechanic there that's like holding you back. Anyway, so I would say for that one, I'd give it to Valorant in the mechanical execution of utility, not necessarily the utility itself. All right, so that sums it up for mechanics. Right, so. All right, the next difference I'd like to talk about is strategy depth. What do you think, Amador?
Yeah, CSGO, at least on this side, is going to be a big winner for strategy. I mean, 20 years of developing strategy is quite an advantage from a community perspective. I mean, Valorant hasn't even had that time to become that competitive.
They're really just different. Like, I'm sure Valorant probably has a higher variety of strats, especially as they add more heroes with more utilities and more like abilities. I'm sure that there definitely will be more strategies. But just because there's more strategies doesn't necessarily make the strategies better. Counter-Strike, like he just said, the strategy, like the meta of it, has stood the test of time. It's a very popular esport. Valorant, I don't know if the type of strategies people will come up with will be just as successful. I don't know if it maybe it's, for me, it's a little bit too convoluted. Like there's too many things going on at once, where in Counter-Strike is a little bit easier to have manage on. But I would say overall, I'd say they're about even as far as like as far as strategies. I think that they're both very deep. Counter-Strike is a little deeper in some areas over others. Like say gunplay, like the way you buy your guns, I think is a little bit more deep in Counter-Strike. But overall, I'd say they're equal. All right, for the next point, I'd like to talk about stability, specifically the servers and just the stability of the game overall. So for Counter Strike, for example, there's a lot of hackers is a big thing to point out, and then for Valorant, they have really great, like, I think it's 180 tick servers, and it's basically when you play Counter Strike, a lot of times it feels like you could have your crosshair right in someone's head, and I don't know, it's just a tiny bit of lag or whatever it is, but you'll just miss. But in Valorant, it feels like your shots always are hitting. Like the hitboxes just feel more consistent.
Valorant servers are definitely better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, so this next point is probably the biggest one for why someone might pick Counter-Strike over Valorant, and that is the maps. Counter-Strike has amazing maps, classic maps. They've been tenured. Okay, you have Dust 2, you have Inferno, you have Mirage, which is great. You have Nuke, which is, controversial, and you have the new Vertigo. But in Vertigo is arguably the worst map out of all of them. A personal favorite of mine, honestly, but a lot of pros don't like it. But compared to Valorant, man, Valorant's maps are awful. They're unimaginative. There's not a lot to like. They're very boxy, and you have to check. There's so many corners you have to check. I know it seems like I'm being kind of petty about it, but like genuinely, like if you go down long A down Dust 2 on Counter Strike, there's like 2 angles to check, right? And it's just a matter of your reaction time of like going to sight and then to down low, like to wherever you're aiming, right? But in Valorant, I find that there's just so many corners. Like there's only one place to ever look, and it's just, I don't know. What do you think, Amador?
I actually kind of like Valorant's maps. They kind of remind me of Overwatch, and that's a little bit more up my field. But I mean, Counter Strike's maps are, I think they're kind of like just all-time classics. It's hard to. I'm not even saying this from like a utility perspective. Like it's not a matter of whether or not the gameplay is better because of how the map is designed. It's just that I understand the layout of maps for both, and I find one a little bit more natural, and the other one, you can tell has been cleaned and fixed for maximum like competitive edge. Whose reflexes are the best, their aim. So and that would be a criticism of CSGO. I think is just that the community is so competitive that even the developers design the maps to reflect what I would describe as being tailored to what would please
Like
the pros.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not necessarily even a bad thing. It's just like Overwatch maps. There's a lot of scenery to them. They're a lot more green. There's stuff to look at, and there are plays you can make on them. I think Valorant definitely has that as well. Like what you'd call them an opportunity for an ultimate. That's how I would say. It's like you can tell like positioning and stuff like that. It could happen. So, but I mean, Valorant's not that similar to Overwatch. There are some gap differences though. So, but I'd still say CS:GO's maps. I mean, when all is said and done, I probably prefer just because I know that the fault is in me if I fail. So that is a big difference, like in performance.
Yeah, I would say that like Valorant's maps are fair, but they're just a little too, like there's not really any map control. I don't know. There's a very good video about this that I'll link in the description, talking about map design and map control. It definitely is a big criticism of Valorant. I'd give it to CSGO. They have better maps. Valorant though will definitely benefit when they get better maps. So as soon as they get better maps, I think that'll really, really change how Valorant has been perceived, and I think just like the gameplay overall will be improved if they add a couple better maps. And that will lead us now to our overall judgment. For this part of the video, my friend Amador was not able to be a part of it. I had to cut the original recording, but just to go over our overall thoughts, essentially Amador just kind of thought that Valorant doesn't really bring anything new to the table. It's kind of just a copy of other games, and he's unsure if that will add like if that will hurt the longevity of the game. And for me, I basically just thought that Valorant would be improved with better maps. I might even play it over Counter-Strike if it had better maps. And Counter-Strike, I think, would be improved if they just made throwing utility and like coming up with your own strategies, and then like doing those things in game a little easier, like having lineups and things like that, showing you when your smoke's gonna land, things I said earlier on in the video. But anyway, that's pretty much all we had to say about this topic. I think both of us prefer Counter-Strike overall, but Valorant is certainly a good game, and I really hope to see it succeed and have better maps and better strategies, watch the meta develop. And yeah, so I think both are great. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it to this end of the end of the video, then give it a like. Also, happy to announce that Cargo Kings has partnered with Indiana Syndicate, gaming org ran by some of my friends. So you'll be seeing some collaborations and stuff like that. But go check out their Twitter. They don't really have a YouTube channel, but you can watch their competitive Call of Duty videos. Anyway, have a great day, and I'll see you guys later.